What if we could cheat death, or at least extend our lives? Science is now exploring new ways to slow down and even reverse the process of aging. But what would the world look like if that happens? I'm Nadir Nahdi, and this is the Doha Debates podcast.
Yeah, it's rolling, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1.
Is it natural to die? Yes, but polio was natural too. What did we do about polio? We got rid of it.
Humans are, by definition, immortal. What is immortal is what decays.
Sad fact is that many old people are not wise at all. They're just as stupid as many young people.
If we have the resources to research, then why are we not researching how to make existing lifespan healthier?
Today's debate is aging something to be embraced or a disease to be cured? I'd like to welcome our guests. To my right, Dr. Natasha Vita-More, innovator in healthspan and memory preservation. Dr. Alaa Murabit, a physician and global health advocate. And to my left, Michael Hauskeller is a professor of philosophy at the University of Liverpool, and Dr. Thalia Arawi is a bioethicist and the co-founder of Theory to Practice. Now to the question, is aging a natural stage of life to be honored, or a biological flaw that humanity should overcome? Thalia, I want to pass that to you.
Ever since I was a child, not necessarily a child, but I recall when I was maybe 18 or something, I dreaded old age. Not for me. I dreaded old age for my loved ones, because old age was equated in my pre-conscious or even conscious with death. So eventually I learned to embrace old age as something beautiful, actually. And we are lucky if we reach that age, other things considered. So I don't see it as a disease.
That's fascinating. Is there a counter argument to this? And I want to send this to you, Natasha.
Oh, yes.
Let me know what you think about it.
I think it's really important to understand what aging means. And it means something via each field. For example, in medicine, the pathology of aging is a cellular breakdown, destruction of cells, which affects our organs, which affects our entire bodily system. And this is entropy. It's breaking down, causing diseases, cancer, dementia is on the rise, certainly. But it's a cellular breakdown. And that is something that I think needs to be cured. I think it's our number one issue that we have as humans. I think all life is seen as something precious, and to allow that to happen to me is immoral. And especially for elderly people over 60, 70, 80, whose bodies are frail, who are suffering from muscular loss, bone density loss, dementia. If we don't work with that to help them, what's the point of being here, in my view? Now, another thing that I think is very important to understand, that aging as the passage of time with maturity, with maturation of life experiences, that's a totally different concept of aging. In that regard, aging is something to be valued, something so precious, again, like life is precious, but it's the wisdom that we gather through our experiences. It's our experiences that give meaning to life. I mean, how many of you know someone who's come back from the dead and said, death gave me meaning to life? Let me die again to give meaning to life. But no, you hear people talk about their experiences, and that gives meaning. And that's why purposefulness is so important. Excuse me, I didn't mean to go on so long, but I think it's a really important issue.
Absolutely.
The definition of aging.
That?
Yeah,
Please,
yes.
go ahead.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. But diseases, even memory losses and cognitive problems and health problems do come also to young people.
Of
so
course.
it's not just a matter of aging. So in that case...
But the cell is aging
Yes.
during that. It's diseased.
Yes. So the disease, you might say the disease, is that cellular atrophy.
Yes.
Okay.
Entropy, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or entropy.
Yeah.
But not my or you or whoever growing old. And that's what we usually consider to be aging. Death was my nightmare ever since I was 10 years old. Okay, I would always look at my loved ones, go to a plant. We had a plant in the balcony, and this is very personal, but I'm saying it. Mm-hmm. And I used to hide my face and start crying because I was afraid of that day when I'm going to lose them. So I was haunted by the idea of death and separation. But I made peace with death. And now when I look at the technological advancement with robotics, with everything that's happening, and the lack of human life, I say, thank God I'm going to die, you see. But that presupposes that I have a belief that there's something after death, which is mainly my meeting again and being again with those I love and lost.
Beautiful, Thalia. And thank you. Both of you have laid the foundation for this debate really eloquently. On one side, we have, from what I understand, an appreciation of death and everything it brings, but also understanding aging as a set of biomechanic processes that can be prolonged, etc. On that note, I would love to bring in Michael here, because is there something we're missing? Right now we have two ends of a spectrum, but I'm sure there's a more esoteric philosophical argument here about aging. And what might that be?
For me, it's important to see also the connection between aging and death. And we can separate the two conceptually. We can theoretically imagine that we age and continue to age without ever dying, right? And I think most people would agree that would be horrible.
Well, I think you're talking about immortality, and it's a false notion.
Exactly. If you understand aging in
scientifically
the
impossible.
First way you described, namely as physiological deterioration. So that would be a horrible thing. And it seems to me that paradoxically, what makes it less horrible, the aging, that deterioration, is that it ends with death. But I believe that you would think about it the other way around. Aging is so horrible because it does lead to death. So it's death itself that needs to be staved off. And that's what we're trying to do when we're trying to prevent or even reverse aging, staving death off as much as possible.
Well, I think we do that anyway on every level. Isn't that what we do with safety belts, with oxygen masks?
No, it's not quite the same thing.
Every day of our lives, we're doing everything possible to stave off death. But going back to this, I am not looking at aging as a build-up to death. I'm staying out of that conversation. I'm not someone who discusses immortality. I do not support the belief in immortality other than a spiritual belief, perhaps, or a Taoist understanding of it, a Buddhist understanding of it, a Christian understanding, any religious understanding of it, because an afterlife is an immortal life, and that's what I was brought up Episcopalian, and that's what we strive for. Do good in this life and do better in the afterlife, which is immortal life, and that's the Christian belief. And that's not part of my
The
dialogue.
point I'm trying to make is that I agree with you. If we're just talking about aging and the winding down of our bodies, right, we're getting sicker and sicker. If you see that as aging, then I don't see any reason why we shouldn't try to do something about it, as we do, right?
Yes.
We all want to grow old being healthy rather than sick.
But that applies to
so
non-aged people as well.
Well, on that note,
Yeah, of course,
Yes.
generally.
on that
right?
note, I think what might be useful to understand is like aging in a practical sense in our lived realities. And here I want to bring in Alaa. Like, what would the world look like if we start to engineer aging away?
Well, so I found this conversation super rich because I really appreciate being able to separate the biological realities from the physiological and from the, from the philosophical. I think the question I continue to ask myself when it comes to global health writ large, to your point, this is not just a question about aging, is does it make more sense given finite resources, given the way that we invest in global health innovation and research and development, does it make more sense to add years to already long lives or to add life to existing years for underserved populations? That to me is the real question. And I think there's a health span versus lifespan question that is very fair.
Definitely.
Because everything you're saying, I mean, dementia's on the rise in the 30s, in the 40s. We're seeing breast cancer
Early
younger.
onset.
Yeah, we're seeing cancer younger than it's ever been. And we live in an era where we still have 5 million children every year dying under the age of 5. So for me, it's not can we? It's not about what's possible. I think the beauty of health innovation is it has led to the eradication of disease. We have, in the past 20 years, reduced child mortality so significantly. We're at 99% decrease in polio. I mean, we've done incredible things through innovation. I would never want us to say, let's not explore the science. But I do want to ask, what does it say about our priorities that we're talking about, okay, do we take something from 85 to 120 years old? Or do we talk about making sure a newborn can survive past the age of 5? And I would underlay that with, I do think there's a really important equity question here. My challenge with a lot of the research in aging is it is very expensive. And it means that it will go to a subsection of the population, and that is the wealthier population. And it will only increase those inequities. And that's not even getting into the gender dynamic of it. I mean, women are your primary caregivers. If you suddenly have a significantly longer lifespan, you are talking about women leading into caregiving even longer. And the one area where I really want us to kind of emphasize here is we live in a time where women already live longer than men, and yet they spend a quarter more of their lives in ill health. So I don't think it's the longer your life, the healthier you may or can be. I am very pro, if we can research it, we should learn about it. But the question of where we then put the resources, to me, is the big question.
That's fascinating. It's almost like we haven't got normal health right. Why are we looking to extend life even further? Do you have anything to say about that?
A couple of things. What came to mind is, first, we live in a world of sick care, not health care. Healthspan is so important, and healthspan is at every age. That means living a healthy life, not just a long life. And as far as the quality of life, whether you live 10 years or 20 years, I'm alive today and I love life. So I want to be alive tomorrow and love life. And some people don't, and that's fine. If they want to die, that's their choice. But if I love life and I'm healthy and I'm doing everything I can to be healthy, who is to tell me I cannot continue to live my life? The maximum lifespan we know as a fact is 122.3 years. That Jean Comey, a French woman who was written up and well known for that. Now, her lifespan, now this is documented. Blue zones may tell you something different, but where's the real facts in blue zone science? We don't know. It's just a bunch of numbers that we don't know how they're generated. But blue zones do bring us back to the health span issue and the global advocacy of it and the efficacy of it and the equity of it. You don't have to pay to be in a blue zone. You can create your own blue zone. And I think if we market blue zones or longevity zones or maybe health span zones more effectively, then people learn to eat well and exercise better, to get much better purposefulness, nutrition, love, community, these elements that we know these zones do generate. And it doesn't cost money. The last comment I wanted to make is I think it's a really important one, is the cost of it. I am so concerned about the cost. I cannot afford to go to a longevity clinic unless I'm invited to give a talk because they're so expensive. And they are. However, now I'm not an economist. Maybe, Michael, you might know this better than me as a philosopher that deals with economics to some degree. I don't understand it, but I know it works, that the prices come down. You get some product in the marketplace, there's competition, free market trade, the prices come down. And I think that's very good. Plus, here's something else. I don't want to be the canary in the cage. I don't want to be the first placeholder in trying out a new experiment, a new therapy. And yes, maybe the rich will get it first, but why not let that? I mean, let's watch and see what happens. We've noticed this with stem cell therapies. We've noticed this with gene editing. We've noticed it with different drugs, hormones, hormone replacement therapy. I went on very early on. I was taking now I take bioidentical estradiol. So it changes over time. And I don't know what that early estrogen, horse urine, I should say urine is probably more elegant here. Horse urine, what is the medical term for it?
No, I was going to chuckle, but then I tried to hold it in. And then and I was like, okay. I'm into it, though. Keep going.
Whatever it was, Premarin, I think it was. Even the hormones for women has changed over time. I'm 75. I've been on hormone replacement therapy since I was 47. I have seen a difference in the advances.
Yeah, I want to pick up this idea of accessibility of longevity treatments. Yeah. And Thalia, I'm going to throw this to you. What are the ethics of the accessibility of said treatments?
Again, we need to really make a difference between what do we mean by treatment. If treatment is to make sure the cellular entropy will not go off guard and do whatever it wants, that's one thing. But if we're also saying treatment to make me live 300, 400 years or be immortal, that's another thing. Ethical issues are plenty, and I'm not going to give a talk on ethics. And we have an expert here in philosophy. But for example, I need to think of my autonomous choice of extending my life years, if possible, this is heuristically, for 300 years. This is my decision, but how does my decision affect the risks on or the welfare of others who are going to come after me, either as a population or as not having access to this? The age divide, it's not only now a digital divide, there's also an age divide, a wealth divide.
For me, I think one thing that's really important to recognize is global health really is global health for the underserved and for countries around the world. If you are not a wealthy country, you are reliant on financing and on systems and support to be able to get access to even basic vaccines, basic nutrition. So it only kind of reinforces for me that this would be really something that caters to wealthy elites who could afford it. Because I don't see us creating a vaccine alliance for longevity when we still have children dying from malnutrition and poor sanitation. So for that for me is one of the challenges. The second thing I would say is I appreciate the notion of economies of scale as populations get older, but what we have seen, and a lot of that I think is exciting, but it's a speculative future. What we have seen with aging populations is actually that they are an incredible economic strain on our populations, that especially if you don't match longer lives with healthier lives, right? And so I go back to the original question of if we have the resources to research, then why are we not researching how to make existing lifespan healthier? That to me is the real question. I have no challenge if we're at the point where we say, hey, around the world, whether you're born in Bogota or Tripoli or New York, whether you're born in Bronx or Manhattan, you get the same experience, the same quality of life, then I have no challenge. Great, people should live longer. But we're not there yet.
Mike, I'd love to get your opinion on this. Is this just another facet of modern human life, like AI and other modern inventions, that is perpetuating divides that exist today and potentially will only benefit the rich and further compound the suffering from people from lower incomes in the global south?
I think that Natasha is actually right that new innovations tend to be very expensive at the beginning, and after a while everyone has access to it. So it's very likely if we develop something that actually stops or even reverses the aging process, that after a while everyone will benefit from it. What we are actually discussing, or ought to be discussing, is the claim that some or most radical life extensionists make, namely that halting the aging process and finding a way to stop this is a screaming moral imperative, and that nothing is so important as that. And we should invest all our resources into that, because death is the greatest evil. And as long as we just cure this or that disease, and at the end people die anyway, as we do, right? And then we have to look at priorities. We just say, really? Really, do we need to invest into this more than anything else? And then we look at how the world is, right? Millions of children starving to death or being killed or whatever. So many people don't have a sufficient life quality. So as long as that is not the case, should we really invest all or most of our resources into figuring out what makes us age and try to do something about it? And I think we shouldn't.
One thing to quickly correct there is cost and access are not the same when it comes to global health. So the costs may be reduced, but that doesn't make them more accessible to a significant portion of the world, right? So otherwise we wouldn't have children dying from preventable diseases. We wouldn't have, childbirth still being the #1 cause of death for women in developing countries, because the cost, actually, you can get a $1.70 postpartum drape that has 99% success rate, and we still cannot get it.
I don't know how to solve it because I don't go to Davos. I'm not a politician. I'm not a wealthy person. I'm not a royalty. I'm not part of that society that dictates the rules for the rest of the world. But I just do the best I can within my own field. Now, how can we influence governments to behave better and not have wars? Okay. How long has this been going on? We've had wars for eons and eons and eons ever since civilization started, going back to Neanderthals. And that's the way it is. But we say that's natural. But here we are talking about that it's bad. but then it's natural. So we get into this, what is natural and what's not natural? Is it natural to die? Yes, but polio was natural too. What did we do about polio? We got rid of it.
No, sorry.
Malaria,
I have
some
to,
said it's natural.
Sorry,
go
Natasha.
ahead. Yes,
I think that's a bit. I never said that there was any negative in the research, right? So I don't think the discussion has said that one is natural, one is inherently not, that we shouldn't. I actually think multiple people around the table have said, no, it's not about what's possible. It's clearly possible. We could do innovation. We can do the
whether
research.
we should, that's the issue.
It's not even to me whether we should. I think there's been a lot of incredible, somebody could have said, should we go to the moon? And we would have a lot of innovation that we have today.
Yes.
So that's not my challenge. My challenge then is, what is the practical application of the science?
Okay.
That for me is the question we have to ask, because unfortunately in the world we exist in today, global health is a zero-sum game. Unfortunately, in the world we exist in today, polio still exists because governments cannot fund it. They will not fund
it. All boils down to governments.
But it's not just governments, because when we're talking particularly about health innovation, especially in wealthy countries, you are talking about the private sector. You are talking about insurance. You're talking about an entire layer of asset and resources that there could be opportunities to say, actually, this should be going to things that exist today, to creating better opportunity, dignity for lives today. That doesn't
I'm not sure
say
wealth has much to do with it. I look at the United States, which is not the wealthiest country in the world by any stretch, but it's a wealthy country. But look at the levels of obesity.
But that's my point exactly on healthspan versus lifespan.
Look at the horrible food.
But that's my point exactly.
And you can live in the most remote areas of the world and have the best food. So it's...
But that's my point exactly.
Yes.
That's my point exactly. My question is, if we have right now, if we were to invest a portion, as much as we do, in having this conversation around longevity, the research and science that's behind it, and the very vocal, I would say, and quite wealthy voices that are behind it, that are propelling more and more resource into this, if we could instead say, hey, how about the underserved communities in your own country? Hey, how about obesity in your own country? How about diabetes in your own country? Cardiovascular disease? We are going to have the highest health costs at the national and global
I'm very
level
aware of that.
because of these things, not because of an aging population. Yes, disease has increased in aging populations. It has overwhelmingly increased in younger populations. We are talking about shorter lifespans. And you earlier said something that I thought was very interesting about, I don't want to be the first. Let the wealthy be the first, right? In the same way
That's true.
In the same way that war has been true for centuries, unfortunately, one thing that's been very true in global health research is it's never the wealthiest that are the first when it's testing. It is always your marginalized.
In some areas, eugenics and whatnot has taken place.
It's your marginalized. No, until today, if you look at clinical trials, if you look at the core biological fact, the data that we use, the vast majority.
So what is your solution to this problem?
Which problem?
The problem about the inconsistencies, the inequities, everything that you said.
So that's what I've been doing for the past 15 years, has been working to find financing and policy pathways
and
to ensure
been successful?
We have been. We've been quite successful. Do I think successful equals means that the problem is solved? No. I mean, for example, you have the Vaccine Alliance that has been able to save millions of children's lives, and yet we are still falling behind. I think there's a lot of people around the world who are trying to solve different pieces of the puzzle. Yes,
exactly. That was the point.
I think the challenge is when one of those pieces is very expensive and it takes away resourcing, access, and opportunity.
So
but is it taking away government
here?
money? Where's that? Who's it taking it from?
I think both private sector and government, public and private.
I don't think it's taking government sector.
Taxpayers. We're not saying, or at least at this point, I'm not saying we should halt what you are doing. Indeed, we should not halt it, I would say it. If my mother was alive, I would enroll her, for example, or if she wanted autonomy and otherwise. But let's consider spheres of justice here. Okay, while we are investing in AI, while we are investing in anti-aging, we are also authentically investing in solving these problems. So we have, it's been maybe 2 decades, people are speaking, the world is a global village. To me, the more global it is, the less united it's becoming. So let's give that and let's give this. This is how we work as one human race. But the big question is not about values and views, it's about who is this our? Is it everyone? Is it the global north? Is it the global south? Is it both of them together? For example, now I'm working with the Genome Project 2 phase, okay? It's fascinating. The proposal is fascinating. I cannot say more about it because we're still working on it. But the divide between the haves and the have-nots and the global north and the global south when it comes to genome editing it is so widespread. We speak slogans that we're going to make it global, but it's not a human genome project. It is a global north, maybe human genome project.
What I imagine in this envisioned future where aging is less and less of a variable is what impact does that have on the way that we organize as societies? Let's say hypothetically, for example, people are living longer, but we also at the same time have declining birth rates. So now you have a population that's living beyond 100 and less people are being born. This has the potential to fundamentally turn our societies inside out, how we organize our spirituality around it, the ethics of that. Have any of you had any thoughts about what that imagined future might look like and its implications?
I mean, that's one of, if I may, that's one of the possible ethical problems of radical life extension, right? Let's say we managed to find a way to halt and reverse aging, and we all lived a lot longer. Then probably we would have less children, if any children at all. And then the question is, well, would that be a bad thing? What are children good for? You might say, we just need children now because we get old and die, right? So we need to replace people constantly. Once we all live forever or indefinitely long, that is no longer needed. And then the question arises, might there be something else, some importance to their being and constantly becoming new people who enter the world, perhaps with fresh ideas, new perspectives, and so on. And I tend to agree with that, or I tend to think that this is important. And now you might say, as someone who thinks we should all live a lot longer, that's not a necessary implication of that. We might still have children, and we might, yes, but most likely there will be a lot less because people might no longer feel the need to have them, or there might not be any room for them, right? Because every role in society will be occupied by the people who are already there.
Exactly.
So then the question is there value in there
but
being
that's a problem,
new people
politically and
not,
economically?
right?
That's a problem we already have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are not abdicating
It's
once
so
they get to a
interesting.
particular age. But really quickly, one thing I'll add there is just to piggyback on your question, I would also love to hear your perspective on both people and planet. What does it do to our own experience as people if we have radically extended lifespans? But then also planet, because resources are finite, and we already know that. And we're already facing the reality of climate change and climate insecurity in so many countries, particularly those that are most vulnerable already.
What's interesting to me in this conversation is that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't think much further back than that, the fear, the excruciating fear, anger, disorientation, and angst was about overpopulation.
True.
But it's not a matter of overpopulation anymore. It's a matter of population decline. I was in Japan 10 years ago speaking at the Topos conference. I was brought there to talk about longevity because they were very worried about the population decline. And that was an anomaly at the time, but we've seen that that has been trending a bit. The birth rates reduced, as you were saying. And that causes some concern, to be sure. The future has its promises and perils. There'll be dystopian and utopian, and then there'll be reality. And I think we need to stay focused on reality because we need to be strategic thinkers in this regard and look at not just only our desires and hopes and wishes, but what is really available, what is possible.
I don't think we stop the ball on longevity research. I really don't. I think there's enough private sector interest and enough high net worth interest that there will continue to be research here. What I'm asking for is that the advocacy for those that are already underserved, that already have low quality of life because they can't get access to basic care, that is also part of the conversation. And then really quick, just on the population, that's true in certain countries. So fertility has declined in certain countries. There still is a question of family planning and others. So, but no, I fully agree with you on all counts.
So to go back on children, okay, this is one issue that you will face when you talk about longevity and extended lifespan. But there are other issues, education. So if I'm going to live 300 years, how am I going to cope in my society if I don't have all the education that I need to be able to survive? What about my career? What about my pension? So these are all things that we need to think about. And speaking of the notion of the self, okay, which is, I think, is extremely important, because sometimes the body looks like an enemy, okay, because it's betraying the soul that is inside of you. But the choices we make, for example, when we talk about living will, a dying patient writes a living will, we always make sure that we talk to that patient over the years to make sure that he did not or she did not change her mind. And why is that? Because the self at time 1 is one thing, and the self at time 2 is going to be different because of life experiences, challenges, losses, what have you. So what about the self over the 300? Maybe when I'm 300 years old, condemned to be 300 years old, and just playing the devil's advocate here, I'm going to regret making the decision of extending my extending my life years. I might regret it.
I practice Stoicism. I have to do my daily meditation. And being in this country, one thing that has come to mind, and I find this interesting, it ties in, the prayer that is chanted multiple times a day. It's not my religion. I don't mind. I don't care. I mean, be whatever religion or spiritual or non that you choose. I believe in freedom of choice and your right to choose. But I love that it's a reminder. And I think we need more reminders in whatever practice or field we're in about the value of being human and the beauty of life and being human. And we have evolved to this point.
Please,
yeah,
Michael,
go ahead.
please.
Sorry.
I'm surprised that you emphasize the beauty of being human and so on. I'm surprised because I'm not quite sure how that aligns with your belief in life extension or your advocacy of life extension.
I don't see a dichotomy there, or a challenge or a conflict at all.
But you might say this is part of the human condition, right? That we age
I think
and
part
die.
of the human.
So if you want to abolish it, I don't know whether.
Oh no, you're absolutely correct there. And I don't want to talk my personal religious or philosophical beliefs. I think that's inappropriate here.
I think they're actually very enriching for this conversation.
I think that, well, I'm not going to, but I think that what is important, and to pay homage to what you're saying, it's a very important point you make. Yes, to improve upon the human condition is something that we've done since our earliest days. To build fire, to build swords, arrowheads.
But this is not just improving,
language.
it's completely changing it, right? A life without death
manipulating it
would be very different.
I don't think so. Did I say a life without death?
No, you didn't.
No, I
but
didn't.
That's what we're talking about.
No, we're talking about
radical life
curing.
extension, aren't we?
No. You've been using a term I coined, and inappropriately, but I've let it go because that's okay. I coined radical life extension many, many years ago because I didn't want to use other terms, and I didn't like anti-aging. And I stepped back from it because it's been taken over by certain groups that I think don't represent the true nature of it, just like my philosophy has been kind of watered down, and just like if you have a religion and it gets on too much on the outskirts, and the radicalization of it or the fundamentalist aspects of it can take it to an area where it didn't originate. So,
Do you have an example of that? Like, how's it been distorted?
I think that I want to be very careful. Okay, so I'm going to skip that for the moment. But just to respond to Michael respectfully, I think that the human condition has always been to overcome its odds, its obstacles. That should be our basic get up every day, brush your teeth, help people who need it. Why is that not part of our consciousness or psyche? So I'm looking for a higher consciousness human. That's what I'm going towards. Okay.
And I want to thank you for providing that nuance. I think it's very easy to distill longevity and aging as something that's just about techno-hubris and an opportunity for us to arrogantly preserve life because we have the capacity to. But actually, there's an ethic there, and there's an intention to make the world better.
Yes.
So thank you for clarifying that.
One thing I have to admit is that I'm discovering you. The idea I had of Natasha when I read was something, and I see another human altogether here. So my question is the following. We have been talking about the poor and the rich, the advantage and the disadvantage, the global north and the global south. let's put this aside and think in terms of let's assume everyone is rich and everyone can have access to longevity medicine, okay, to put it very simply. Not all people are like you, okay? Not all people are humanitarian. Some are outright vicious, okay? Evil, even. So would you conceive of something similar to the Seattle God Committee, which was the committee that decided who gets to go to the dialysis machine when it was first invented, to decide among the list of those who are in line? It's like an organ transplant, but it's an age transplant in a way. Yeah. So who gets to get this drug and who does not? And what would be the criteria other than age?
Okay, with liver transplant, if you had sclerosis, for example, and then you want to transplant because you haven't been drinking for a while, and then you're taking a few sips on the side, you don't get that liver transplant. So I think good behavior speaks a lot. I think age is almost irrelevant. It's that thing about the train, and this is a moral question. And when I was teaching ethics at the university, the train's going and it's going to hit an old person or a young child. Who do you choose? Well, the old person may be the person who's going to discover the cure for cancer. Maybe that young child is going to grow up to be like a Hitler. My answer to you is, I think that there's going to be such a major change that there's going to be further abundance. And I'm not an abundance person. I'm not like Pollyanna, ooh la la, woohoo. I'm more of a Eric Drexler thinker about nanotechnology and molecular manufacturing. And we're seeing 3D printing is taking great strides. Remember just 5 years ago, organ transplants were so rare. I mean, people were dying waiting for a heart transplant, a liver transplant, some transplant. Or they die. And they were waiting for someone to die to get it. How insane is that?
But who gets to get the longevity drug?
Just a minute. The person has to die first before they get it. So it's, who's going to die? That, to me, is very...
creepy, in a way.
Yeah, sicko, creepy.
I just want to interject selfishly and invoke my powers of moderation. What I've realized around this conversation, especially around access and human nature, is that there's an absence of God in that conversation. It's very, very human orientated. Does God have a role on this table about aging? And if he does, what implications around spirituality does aging pose? I think about my own tradition, and I can talk about it all day. I'm very comfortable with it, but I come from an Islamic tradition, and so much of my spiritual faith is shaped around this afterlife, or working towards this perceived afterlife. But now we're talking about the very real reality of an everlife. And what are the implications for me spiritually negotiating that perceived future? Is this something you guys have thought about? And if so, what are the intersections between God, spirituality, and aging?
I think the answer to that question is independent of whether we believe in God or not. We could just look theoretically at whether God would make a difference if he existed in some way, right? And it seems to me that there are two issues here. Say it's natural to die, right? That's why we should do it. As a normative statement. We could replace nature with God and say God wants us to die after 100 years or so. You could ask, okay, God wants us to die, but do we want to die? That is important too. And the other is an epistemological problem. So regarding our knowledge of what nature wants or what God wants, right? How do we know, right? We could just as well assume that God has a conception of humanity that is based on the power to transform ourselves, right? Perhaps God wants us to solve the riddle of our mortality and do something about it. How do we know, right? So in a way, it doesn't really help to think there's a God, because we don't know what God wants. And even if he knew what God wanted, that doesn't necessarily mean that we had to do it.
But a lot of please go ahead.
Yeah, I can tell you I'm already immortal. I mean, humans are by definition immortal. Okay, what is mortal is what decays. It's the external. So
could you expand that point a bit?
As Rumi once said, "I'm not this hair, I'm not the skin, I'm the soul that lives within." And he says, death is our wedding with eternity. So it's just like when you change homes. When you're a child, you live with your parents, you grow old, you leave your house, you have another house. This is a house, you see? And even if I want to talk about death, when they say total organ failure, okay, it's the soul that is fed up.
And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to actually realize that there's 4 cultures from 4 different continents on this table. And does culture have a role to play in how we perceive aging? Are there different cultural nuances or things that we should take notice of? Because I'm pretty sure that there isn't a uniform experience. There are cultures within my Yemeni, Indonesian, Pakistani experience of how we relate specifically to aging. And I'm sure there's ones in Lebanon and ones in Libya, America, Europe, wherever you're from.
Deutschland,
of course. If that is the case, what is your experience culturally with aging, and how does it differ to other cultures you might come across in the world? Michael.
I don't know. First of all, I
He's
I
not
was
putting you
born
on the
and
spot
raised
at
in
all.
Germany, but I've been living in the UK for more than 20 years, so I feel more British than German. But it seems to me that there is discrimination against old people. I feel there's a tendency to see old people as having done their bit, and now they can go and die in peace or whatever. So there's not much value attached to what old people could bring to society. It's all focused on the young, right? Now, you might say, and that was suggested to me, the wisdom of the old, but the sad fact is that many old people are not wise at all. They're just as stupid as many young people. So old age doesn't necessarily bring wisdom.
That's lovely.
But it does bring experience and the opportunity to learn. Old people are potentially, at least, the custodians of that past and can tell us what it was actually like to live, for instance, in a totalitarian regime like the Nazi Deutschland, for instance.
I was born in Canada and raised there until I was 14. But very recently, my grandma, who had spent her whole life in Libya, where I had moved when I was 14, had a stroke. And she is physically unable to move her body, but she's been remembering a lot of her younger years. So we had a chance to sit down with her and record some of her stories. It was an opportunity to learn about her in a different way, where she was in a different headspace. She was more reflective. So I do think there is a very unique and irreplaceable role, which is the storytelling, which is the carrying of tradition, which is, I think there is something about hearing elder stories and better understanding of what a good ancestor looks like and is that is very unique to that generation.
What about you, Thalia? I'd love to get a cultural insight. And does Lebanese culture see elderly differently?
I can tell you that in general, there is respect for the elderly. So if your elderly parent or grandparent is sick or in need of more attention, it's a big no-no to put them in a house or in a home. That's giving up on them. Okay, and in certain areas, not in the capital, there's the image of the elderly. Everyone goes to him or her for wisdom and for information, although doesn't mean that they're all wise.
In the country, the United States, there is so much effort. It's phenomenal towards the older people, senior citizens. The benefits are phenomenal. The attention paid to them is phenomenal. It's through the government, through our healthcare system, through insurance companies, through corporations. There is the most remarkable campaign it's been growing over the past 10 years to its really heightened. Now, if you're a senior citizen, you are respected first. And I'm delighted to be part of a country that respects the elderly, the senior citizens that much.
I'm going to leave you guys with a leading personal question. If I had a pill and it offered you 200 years of life, would you take it? And I want to start with you, Thalia.
No.
Why not?
Okay, we are selves in relation, okay? I don't want to live where my loved ones are not with me, okay? We are a very emotional culture, by the way. I'm weary about the future. I'm weary of machines taking over. I'm weary of greed and power taking over the universe. I'm seeing less humanity. And I will not take it.
Thank you. Michael?
I don't know. It would depend on the circumstances. For instance, you said, are others involved too? Is it just me? What about my family? That would affect my decision. I'm curious about the future, wouldn't mind living a little longer, but would I then have to live 200 years? Maybe I wouldn't want that. So will I still have the choice to die earlier if it's not to my taste? So it would depend on all those different questions and the answers to that.
Sure. Alaa?
I think my answer is a bit similar to Michael's. I'm super curious. Would I take it if I still had the abilities I have today? I have a 4 and a 5-year-old. I would be super curious about how they would grow up, and what my grandkids would look like, and who knows if that's promised to me. That being said, just for me, it would be a purely my. I'm Muslim. My own religious belief and my own belief is that our bodies are vessels that we use while we're on earth, and our souls, to your point, continue to exist in a much better place. And so why spend 200 years here when I can exist in a much better place where I hopefully get to see them anyways, whenever they're ready to come? So I would say no, despite the curiosity. So whoever does take it, let me know how it goes.
Finally, Natasha.
I think you think, and you all probably think, I go, oh, yes, give it to me. No, I don't think so. But on the other hand, I kind of like Michael's answer, that it would depend. I don't just do things because it's there. And, I was hoping you'd go matrix on us and say this pill or this way. I want to know what my options are.
Well, what would the other pill be?
No, I would probably take it because I would hope that maybe I could do some good. And that's not selfish. I don't mean it that way at all. I've been alone before. I've been, so I'm not afraid of losing everything. I've lost everything before. So that's okay. I would probably take it to see if I could do some good and explore and see what's going on. Yeah.
Thank you, Natasha.
I'll tell you how your children do.
And on that note, what a beautiful place to arrive to some common ground. I want to thank you all for such a nourishing conversation.
Thank you for
It's been a
this.
pleasure to share space with you.